Dr. Lee, and I want to welcome Dr. Bales, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know you have some updates for us, and then we'll follow your updates with some questions. So I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm not sure if you all have slides that you want to share or need help with sharing, but the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jessica. Can you guys hear me? Well, first thing I want to say, Jessica, thank you so much for your leadership throughout the last couple years, actually, which could not have been more trying on a UP president, I don't believe. And you handled it so well in the short time I've been here. And I just want you to know that I appreciate your leadership. And since coming on board, I've really looked to you for sharing information from the parent group and as a stakeholder, an important stakeholder in this district, helping us transition through this very difficult time. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I speak for all of us, I know. So anyway, this is the closing bell. In previous years, when I was a superintendent, I would take this time to share with the United Parent Council accomplishments from the year and talk about what's up for the upcoming school year. Now this year's a little different in that I'm in an acting role, but I'm going to go ahead and get us started, and then we'll finish with the star of the show for the second part of it. So the first part of the year, I'm just kind of reviewing some things that we're probably all familiar. We started the year in a virtual learning mode. Then we went to in-person learning in October when things seemed, the pandemic climate seemed to change, and then went back to virtual learning in November, and that was done in a dual modality, and that was a real challenging time for everybody because it was new for our staff, it was new for parents to be learning in a dual modality manner. And then in November, we returned to virtual learning and actually stayed with the virtual learning through the height of the pandemic. And December 8th was when I came on board as the acting superintendent and committed to help through the remainder of the year and see through the transition of the new superintendent. I started a listening tour with conversation with all of our stakeholder leaders and groups and parents and students who obviously aren't members of UPC or any affiliation in the district. And I had hundreds of both formal and informal conversations to really kind of learn, the tenor of the district and the hopes of the district and moving forward and so on and so forth. And it was extremely helpful for me. So we worked through the challenges of the height of the pandemic, and we partnered with Honor Health to provide vaccines for staff. And that was, those drive-through events were held January 21st through the 15th of February. And I want to credit Dr. Bales for his work with Honor Health to get that set up for our district. That was a huge breakthrough for us and really opened the door for a lot of things for us as a district as it pertains to our students. So with that in place, we decided that we were going to go to in-person learning with virtual learning options starting February 16th, as you recall, for the K-6, and February 22nd for 7-12. This was an incredibly heavy lift for our teachers. I was so impressed with the feedback I had learned in my learning or listening tour with the job that teachers were doing with the virtual aspect of the learning. And parents in particular were very complimentary of the work that teachers were doing virtually, which I believed really helped. Their mastery of the virtual setting helped when we went to dual modalities, when we invited students back for in-person learning. Shortly after that, in March, we partnered with In-Office DX, which one of our parents who heard me speak at a board meeting followed up with me and created, helped set up this partnership so we could provide COVID testing for our students, our parents, our families, at no cost to families or the district. And it has been a real positive asset for our district in helping control community spread, help parents get answers with students or family members that may have been exposed to COVID. So we're real pleased with that. And that will continue, by the way, into the summer, a little more modified version, but we've already confirmed within Office DX that that'll happen. So that's great news. We worked on extended learning opportunities for the spring at our sites, and we have many things in place. And we also have programs established for the summer at no cost to families, and quite an extensive opportunity for families, more than we normally would offer. Some things that we should be pleased about, and I mentioned some of this at a board meeting not too long ago, but we continually hear that our students are losing a year in their academics. Well, we know that's not true, especially the feedback that we've received from parents on virtual learning and how things have gone this year, and through some of our assessments that we have. We had 73% of our kindergartners and 71% of our first graders proficient on an end of the year Inspect Math. That's a new assessment that we're using for end of the year assessment for those students, which is not great, but it certainly is consistent with how our students have done in the past at those grade levels on assessments we've provided them. So that was somewhat encouraging. We also have multiple indicators from grades 3 through 10 that, for the most part, our students have stayed on track when compared to previous years. So that's really, really encouraging. Again, we'd like to be excelling and doing better than we have in previous years, but under the circumstances, I don't think anybody expected that to happen. But that's a real credit to our community, all of our stakeholders who have come together, parents who have supported the decisions that we've made, even though maybe not always in agreement with them, but have kept the focus on teaching and learning, supporting our teachers. I've been so pleased with the support. I asked you when we went back to in-person to really help support the teachers because they've got a really heavy lift trying to teach in dual modalities. You did that. You've been so supportive. The focus has been about kids. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that coming from all of our stakeholder groups in our community, in particular, our parents. So I just want to say thank you for that. We know we don't always agree, but it's been real clear that our students have been the priority in our school community here, and I'm so thankful for that. I know Dr. Bales is also moving forward. And then the board took on the process, a very difficult process and time-consuming process and thorough process, I might add, of hiring a new superintendent for the 21-22 school year. And Dr. Bales was announced, and he's been in an active transition plan with me. We've been kind of tied at the hip, and it's been a really, really beneficial and smooth transition, I believe, for the district. You've seen dual communications come out from us. We've been discussing every aspect of the organization in great detail and have been on the same page throughout the process. And that's only going to benefit the district moving forward. So it is my pleasure at this time to introduce your new superintendent, Dr. Troy Bales. I can assure all of you, Dr. Bales is going to do a great job for this district. You will be in good hands for many years to come. And I'm confident of that. So Dr. Bales, are all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, and thank you, Jessica. UPC, as president, you've done a great job, and I know you're working well to work with Kia on a transition as well with UPC leadership. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to continue to work closely with the UPC president, UPC as an organization, in helping us continue to focus on what's best for kids. A special thanks to Dr. Lee as well to this transition. He has been completely amazing and helpful. And like he said, we've been talking every day through every situation. And it's been a great opportunity for me to continue to learn from his expertise and making sure that our commitment to the district is a smooth transition. One of the things that I just like to quickly touch on is, some vision and goals in this active transition plan. As I presented to the board through the selection process, I identified basically a 3-phase approach to this transition. The immediate phase, which began upon April 1st in their announcement and selection of me as the finalist, and on all the way through June of this summer is kind of phase 1. Phase 2 begins July 1st when I officially, quote unquote, take the reins and baton from Dr. Lee. And then that goes through December 31st. And then phase 3 is the final 6-month phase, bringing that 14 to 15 month period of time as a transition. We certainly know that in my goals for this transition, it is important to continue to foster and build the board superintendent relationships. That's important that we come together, that we share ideas, and that we make decisions always in the best interest of students. And that we may not always agree, but we will agree to disagree respectfully. And moving forward, we know that when we make a decision, we're behind it together. I also know that, part of, this transition relies heavily on me fostering a great, strong cabinet. And we've got terrific people in the cabinet that have been there the last couple of years, some a little longer than that. And we have some new faces. We certainly know that we recently added Jill Berrigan as our new Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations. And we've just completed the process for selecting my replacement as the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Now, pleased to announce that tomorrow night we'll be recommending Dr. Sean Holmes as the new Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources for PVSD. He currently serves as the director and has previously served in similar leadership roles in cabinet for Scottsdale and Mesa. So very, very well experienced and will certainly help me and the rest of the cabinet in this transition. We know that stakeholder relationships is important. Part of my experience in the last, basically 5 weeks has been to meet with stakeholder leaders around the district, both inside and outside of well-established formal organizations. One of those opportunities for me to listen, as Dr. Lee did in December upon his arrival, was for me to do the same. Side note, I set a goal of meeting with every school council and every school faculty staff within the first 100 days. I'm over 80% of the way there already. It's been quite busy. Fortunately, this is where virtual connections have given me the opportunity to jump in and do as many as 5 in an hour and a half period of time in the mornings. Yesterday was no different. So having that opportunity to meet with the school councils, thank our parents, our teachers, our community members who are active in that shared decision-making model have been extremely important to me, to listen to them, to hear their ideas or their questions. So that's been helpful. And then to help set a tone with the faculty staff meetings, to give them the opportunity to see and hear me talk about some hope and optimism moving into the new year, to thank them for their hard work this year, and to move forward together. One of the other goals area focused on Marcom. We know that we have a new director. We have selected Matt Drogi. I think we've introduced him to this group before, but Matt has come on board and made a great impression with us already, and excited to have his expertise in helping us move forward in marketing communication strategies across the district. As Dr. Lee mentioned, we continue to be focused on extended learning opportunities, and then which included some conversations for extended learning opportunities in fourth quarter. We have summer plans, and then moving into next year. We know that we have additional dollars from the federal level to support extended learning that comes to us in pots of money. Of course, those come with strings, and parameters, but those extended learning opportunities have some financial support that expires. Some of those dollars expire in a year, some 2 years, and some 3 years from now. So we're excited to continue to try to fill in and extend. And it's not just extended learning opportunities. We want to make sure that we're giving kids, enrichment opportunities that they may have missed out on also, that made their elementary, their middle school, or their high school experiences memorable. We hope to provide some new or renewed enrichment opportunities so that they continue to have some experiences that make their journey of excellence here in PV extremely memorable. And also a commitment on my part to make sure that we're continuing to operate transparently in our decisions and that we maintain the financial and fiscal health of the district, being responsible to our taxpayers. So, along the way, some of the next steps that I wanted to talk about real briefly. Actually, let me go back to this. I want to fill in some of these things. Let's see if I missed any of my notes. Don't think so, so I'm good to go on. All right, some of the next steps that we're talking about is a virtual learning plan. As we move forward, we know we need to continue to offer a robust and engaging virtual learning model for our students. We have parents and students that are interested in this. We know we've had teachers that have just knocked it out of the park this year using virtual learning formats. And so, to meet the needs and the interests we believe that are there for a robust learning platform, we are going to be adding a K-12 PV Connect model at Sweetwater Elementary School for next year. This will be our model for that synchronous instruction. We'll be making a presentation tomorrow night to the governing board with some more details, sharing those out to the community Friday and Monday of next week. The registration process will start. We've already geared up with staffing allocations and postings for positions. And so we're making great strides. And Diane Silvestri, our principal at Sweetwater, is excited about that. We were able to do this because we had some changes in leadership. We're actually bringing our virtual learning options, our alternative paths for learning, under one umbrella. Sweetwater will be that umbrella. And underneath the Sweetwater umbrella, we have the traditional Sweetwater model for credit recovery at the secondary level. And then we have the new PV Connect K-12 model. And then we'll also bring underneath the Sweetwater umbrella, the PV Online model. Each of those strands of alternative path for learning will be headed by an assistant principal. So we were able to make some changes with some staffing decisions to support this, and we're really, really excited about that. Some of the other steps that I'll get to in a minute, staffing updates, mass communication and website update, our strategic planning, and then a new initiative called Project Momentum. So some of the staffing updates that I talked about, my replacement as Assistant Superintendent of HR, that will trigger our review of a director position in HR, and we'll make a decision about how we're going to post that shortly. We're in the final stages of a principal selection at Greyhawk Elementary School. And then with the changes that we've made to support Sweetwater, as well as just another vacancy through resignation, we have 3 assistant principal positions at the high school level that we're in the process of filling. We have assistant principal at Pinnacle High School, assistant principal at Paradise Valley High School, as well as assistant principal at Shadow Mountain High School. So those 3 processes will be complete here in the next couple of weeks. And then finally, summer school. This is, we've really had some, I think, high aspirations for a summer school programs to meet as many needs as possible. This has, been one of our challenges to try to meet all those needs. We know that our teachers have been so committed to their students and doing a great job, and some of them truly do need a break to take some time off and rest. So we've targeted our interventions for summer school. And we've even reached out and tried to solicit, some of our long-term and permanent substitutes and daily substitutes as opportunities to continue to support us through summer school programming. Regarding Marcom, we have a RFP out for mass communication website. We know that School Messenger is limiting our ability to communicate effectively with kind of today's trends. So that School Messenger is actually going to be going away sooner than later, but that RFP will give us an opportunity to choose potentially a platform that gives us text messaging possibilities. So we're excited about increasing our communication strengths and strategies with a new mass communication tool and replacing School Messenger. We also know that our website is not as robust as we would like it to be. It's not meeting our needs, and nor is it meeting the needs of our families. And the feedback that we're getting has driven us to seek, at least on the back end, some new platform for making our website more robust and engaging. One of the other next steps that we will endeavor this next year is the strategic planning process. We know that the COVID pandemic over the last year slowed many of our conversations from almost a year and a half ago when we started the process to today regarding a new compass, a new strategic plan, a new vision for the district over the next 3 to 5 years to guide us in our decision-making process. I've asked Dr. Steve Jarris to be the project manager on this, to take the lead in working with me on this. He and I will be meeting with Cognia, our firm that assisted us in this process, so that we can kind of get up to speed, make some revisions, and outline a new timeline for all of our stakeholders to be a part and engaged in the strategic planning process. We hope to have that timeline outlined and reconvene those stakeholders in this process in early August, so that this process can be complete, hopefully, shortly after the first of the year. We want this to be an accordion type opportunity for people to have input, to review. We certainly want to communicate clearly to our governing board throughout this process, and then have the strategic plan adopted for time to plan our resources, both human and financial, for implementation beginning July 1 of 22. So our outcomes are specific around student achievement and engagement. I talked a little bit already. I got ahead of myself regarding the virtual learning and PV Connect model. These are the 3 strands that will be under the Sweetwater umbrella. We've also, just as an FYI and side note, we've had to, submit some paperwork to the state to change Sweetwater's ID number from a 7-12 school to a K-12 school. But Sweetwater PV Online will continue to operate in that asynchronous mode. And depending on registration and enrollment, we'll continue to add staffing as needed. And then there's certainly an opportunity to blend some of PV Online with PV Connect. We know that like secondary special areas and one-offs may continue to be offered through the PV Online format, because we always have to make decisions about how many students do we need in a particular class to make it financially responsible to offer that section in one-offs. So we have that to consider along this way as well. Finally, just an idea that was shared with us. This is one of the great things that kind of happen when you bring some new blood into the district. Ms. Berrigan, our Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations, in her previous role was one of 3 districts that was able to be a part of initiative through the governor's office called Project Momentum. And through her work in her prior district, gave us the opportunity when the governor's office, as well as this partnership was looking to expand, gave PV the opportunity to become involved. This public-private partnership is an initiative funded through the governor's office. It does focus our aligning instruction with data-driven decisions with significant professional development. So we're in the process of identifying about 5 schools. When we look at the data, it doesn't necessarily have to be schools that are Title I schools or high-performing schools. What we want is schools that may be underperforming based on their peers. So when we look at the regression line and we look at, where are they at and where they should be with a lot of the same demographics and populations, if they're underperforming, they're kind of on our list for identifying. So in the next few days, we'll be identifying up to 5 schools that will be part of this initiative in the first year. This planning project will begin this late summer, or maybe early summer. I guess late summer to me is like July, but we'll begin this summer and then continue throughout the year as it moves on. And we may see, the opportunity for some of these teachers to have as much as 10 to 20 additional days of summer training next year as a result of it. So it's really exciting to continue to focus our instruction on data-driven decisions in helping kids succeed. It's a very exciting time. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments as we move forward. But I'm so excited to be here with you today and to kind of set the expectation for, moving into the 21-22 school year as superintendent of public schools in Paradise Valley.
Thank you. Thank you for those updates. We did, as I mentioned a little earlier, get a couple of questions sent in advance. So we'll start with that, and then, live, we'll take questions via Zoom if your question hasn't been captured in the questions that we're going to ask. I actually have a question just based upon your updates that you just provided, Dr. Bales, for the new communication tools that you're looking at. Is it possible, and forgive me because I just don't know, but I'm curious, if there could potentially be like a texting component to, the mass communication that goes out to the community? Is that something you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the tools that we hope and expect to be part of our selection process in a new tool.
Okay, that's very exciting, because it's like, it seems more and more now emails almost seem like outdated, where like phone calls and mail used to be, now emails kind of getting there too, which is wild to think about. But now it's texting is kind of how people are getting their information, and so that's really exciting, and we can't wait to learn more about that.
Yeah, we have a lot of opportunities to consider texting. Of course, we'll probably also have to engage with our group, the governance group, regarding texting, because we'll probably even have to make some adjustments to our policies. So once that all kinds of stuff figured out, our end goal is to have texting capabilities.
That's wonderful, and a great opportunity to reach community members that maybe are not necessarily in there checking their email as neurotically as some of us do.
Yeah, one of the other things that I just wanted to mention, kind of piggyback off some of the things that Dr. Lee mentioned in his first few slides, was, we're still working with our health partners, and, reached out to Embry Women's Health, and they are looking at helping us maybe get into some of our Title I communities for some vaccination clinics and things like that. We're continuing to work with Honor Health and the county as opportunities develop for other vaccinations for 12 and older. And so, and then he mentioned the DX opportunity. We'll continue to offer that partnership in the fall as well. So we want to continue a lot of those opportunities moving forward.
Great news. I did just get a question direct message to me. Will parents be on the committee when looking at the new messenger?
Yeah, that's a great question. The selection process is an RFP official process, and I'd have to try to kick that to Ms. Berrigan, as she may be familiar with our selection process and such, but we've outlined our expectations in that selection process, but I don't believe that parents are into that. Ms. Berrigan, are you available to help us with that question?
Oh, she can't unmute.
What's the?
We just need to unmute Superintendent Berrigan, Jill Berrigan, so she can answer. Sorry.
You should be able to unmute now, Jill. Sorry.
Yeah, she did provide an answer in the chat. There you go, Jill.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there are no parents on that selection process. There are a few in which we would include parents, but we did not include parents on this one. But that information becomes public once the selection process is completed, and so anybody is welcome to look through that and see what criteria were and things of that nature.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
See, that's one thing we don't have to worry about when we're in person, right? Such a strange thing. Okay, so I'm going to sort of kick off. As you can imagine, we did receive a lot of questions regarding the latest update about masks. So I'm going to start with that. And I do see that I'm getting more in the chat. But I'm going to start with the ones that we received in advance, and then I'll move to those if we still need, if they're not answered within the, the responses to these questions here. So, and Key and I are going to sort of tag team this, so you don't have to listen to me drone on and on and on.
Okay.
Okay, so our first question here is, since the earliest a vaccine will be available for children under 12 is in September, and that means that the earliest they will be finished with their 2 shots is likely to be October or later, what are the mitigation plans for elementary schools specifically?
Yeah, I think that as much as I'd like to play tag team with Dr. Lee, since I'm probably the superintendent effective July 1st, I'll try to answer all these as we go along. I think first of all, we're obviously going to continue to monitor the guidance, from federal and state and local agencies. It's likely that, contact tracing and quarantine will continue, particularly as it relates to children under age 12. How it relates to 12 and older who have been vaccinated and are symptom-free after exposure, those may be different mitigation protocols that we have to work through as we continue to seek guidance and questions, that we pose in our appropriate circles at both the county and the state level. We're certainly going to continue to solicit questions and feedback and input from our stakeholders as as these mitigation strategies evolve.
Thank you. The next question we received is, are you concerned that other schools and districts across the country are seeing spikes in infection, increased variant spread, and the number of children hospitalized where the mask mandate has been lifted?
Well, we certainly know from the CDC literature that children, can be infected, they can get sick, and they can spread the virus. What we also know from the CDC is that most children with COVID have mild symptoms, have no symptoms at all. As such, our mask requirement is still in place for the remainder of this school year, and is still in place through summer programs for inside learning. We set an expectation that they could be optional for outside activities beginning with our summer programs, but we've intentionally kept that mask requirement through our summer programs as we continue to monitor the guidance and learn new data for those schools, districts, and charters across the state as well. Moving forward, we'll continue to do that. Those are the students, our own data suggests, for example, that, the more students at the secondary level are the ones that are most susceptible. We know that in what we've seen, and you've probably seen that in some of the letters that have come home from schools at the secondary level. Those are the ones that are getting vaccinated now, that 12 and older, and we'll continue to monitor the federal, state, and local guidance.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions that we're going to try to put together. They're all sort of on the same topic, which is, for children, particularly, I think in elementary, but in general, also that parents want them to continue to wear masks in the fall. Assuming the policy that you've put out there remains. So the first one sort of in that regard is, what supports are being planned for children that need to wear masks?
We're confident that many students, as well as staff, will choose to wear masks. There are many of us that continue to do so, even if we don't have to in certain settings now. We may see this for months and or years to come. We're just not sure. This continues to evolve. This may be the new norm for us, Jessica.
Another question was, other school districts have seen an increase in peer pressure to remove masks, and bullying of children that wear them are significantly increasing. What's the district's plan to combat this specific problem?
We've always taken bullying very seriously in this district, regardless of the situation, and we'll continue to do so. And we'll take the time to alert staff to, the potential. We'll remind students of this concern. And I believe that both at the school and the district level, we have the opportunity to develop some messages and strategies, such as some public service announcements from our student leaders to help us share the message and to encourage people to wear properly fitting masks, and that, that would be something for them to consider doing as a personal health choice.
So on that same sort of note, if children who maybe are not wearing are not wearing a mask, intentionally coughing on other students, will those kinds of things be considered like bullying, or have you plans to sort of discuss how those kinds of issues will be handled?
Yeah, I think that we clearly have policies that address policies and procedures suggesting how we respond to acts of bullying. And, I trust that our building leaders and our teachers will do what our policies and procedures talk about in responding appropriately to acts of bullying.
So moving to vaccines a little bit, what are the discussions happening around mandatory vaccinations for students and or parents to attend in-person school or volunteer on campus during the 21-22 school year?
All right, so as I understand it, so would you repeat that again for me, Kia?
Sure, so it's asking, are there conversations about making vaccinations mandatory for students, and then also looking at volunteers and adults on campus?
Yeah, great question. So at this point, in working with our legal counsel, unless the federal, state, or local governments require vaccinations to be in our schools, such as measles, mumps, and rubella, we will continue to encourage everyone who is eligible to get a vaccination. We're working with our health partners, as I mentioned earlier, to bring mobile clinics to our campuses, particularly our underserved populations, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you. Okay, so we've just got a couple more that came in advance, and then I do see a bunch are popping up in the chat, so we'll move on to that soon. We did get a lot of questions, so I'm not gonna sort of read this exactly. I'm gonna try to just speak to, I think, the spirit of the question, because we did get a few of them around just sort of the timing on the announcement for masks optional, sort of what went into the timing for that decision, as opposed to, just kind of monitoring things, I think is the spirit of the question.
Okay, no, that's fair. Dr. Lee and I talked about this. We've been in communication around all of our communications. That's why we have committed to signing the letters together so that you know where we're at in unison. We announced the next step, the next step beyond just optimism and hope, but that this is our plan to make mask optional. And we said specifically, we will continue to monitor guidance from the federal, state, and local levels. We've all learned an awful lot about the virus over the last 13 plus months. The data continues to evolve. The guidance continues to evolve. Certainly, I believe in local control, but I'm going to tell you that this decision for mask requirements should be made at the legislative or the executive level of government. They agreed on laws for seatbelts and drunk driving and measles, mumps, and rubella. We need to eliminate the adult distractions about to mask or not to mask, in my opinion. And we need to continue to focus our efforts on teaching and learning. Listen, I'm optimistic about the future, and I'm not pessimistic about the what ifs. We will plan for the worst case scenario. We will hope for the best. We need to stay focused on our mission, which is clearly creating world-class thinkers. And if anything we've learned over the last year, in COVID time, 10 weeks from now is a very long time away, and we may continue to learn a lot between now and then.
Thank you, appreciate that. And then we have, this is our final question that came in advance, and it's a lengthy one. So again, I'm going to try to just kind of get to the spirit of the question, which my understanding has to do, seems like it has to do with, and you've already spoken to this. So the question is asking, what specific criteria must be met to remove the mask mandate? But I feel like you've really done a great job of speaking to that. So I feel like that's been addressed. So I'm going to move on to what I think is the second part of this question, which is, who is going to discuss all the factors involved with the emotional, mental, and physical tolls of students attributed by mask mandates and lockdowns, and making sure that there are discussions that encompass all of those things and the general health and well-being of the whole child as educators.
Yeah, I think all of us have a role to play in making sure that our students and their well-being is a healthy, engaging learning environment. I know that our staff is committed. Our teachers have been wonderful about this. And regardless of the challenges that students face in their daily interactions with their teacher and their peers to learn, we want to be there to support them. And, our principals and our teachers have been reporting really good things about how kids have been helping and supporting one another, even through this mask issue, which quite frankly is more of an adult issue than it is a student issue. Our students and I have spoken, they've spoken with Dr. Lee, they've spoken to our principals. We have systems in place to listen to students along this path as well. But moving forward, we'll continue to listen to our stakeholders, solicit input, and we have wonderful social emotional learning specialists and programs put in place at our schools to support kids, regardless of what their challenges are, so that their emotional health is strong and healthy. Many of you know my work over the last 6 years as a volunteer and board member in Team Lifeline, a suicide prevention organization, is near and dear to my heart. So nobody takes it more seriously when it comes to the well-being of students than I do. And I believe that we as a community can support our kids and get through these hurdles together.
Thank you. And I just want folks to know, those who sent emailed questions over, I am forwarding like word for word the context and everything that you've said over to Dr. Lee and Dr. Bales. So, again, it's in the interest of sort of time that and we may have gotten a couple of questions that you sent over, but I think it's very important that they also see the context and with which you're writing your questions. So, and you can affirm that I've sent you the ones so far. We did receive one this morning, and I'm going to send that over to you as well. So I'm going to pop over to our questions in the chat box, which hopefully you have access to as well. The first question is, will the board be discussing the vaccine for ages 12 to 15 tomorrow night? Is that something that's on the agenda or you plan to discuss?
Yeah, Dr. Lee, you want to respond? To my knowledge, we do not have an agenda item specific to that question, Jessica.
No,
Dr. Lee might be making a few comments in his superintendent comments, but there is not an agenda item. Obviously, that was just announced, and we're just waiting for CDC approval today. I believe yesterday was. Keeps losing track of day times, but I think they announced it to Monday, and we were hoping for approval yesterday. So.
Okay, thank you. Now this is a question more about the virtual updates that you gave for moving forward into the next school year. Will there be any restrictions if students want to switch from PV Connect to PV Online to their home school?
No, there isn't any restrictions. I think that what we want to do, I mean, you're making a decision. If as a parent, I'm choosing to enroll in PV Connect, and at some later date, I want to choose to enroll in my home school. That's no different than if a family had chose to enroll in a virtual format, a virtual setting outside of the district. We would welcome you back. So once again, it's like registering for a new school experience. So you're transitioning from Sweetwater PV Connect to your home school. I think that there's considerations and conversations that should take place. Is there a natural break? Is there an end of quarter? Is there semester? Is there, at the end of a unit? I mean, there are lots of things that I think parents should talk to the home school about if they have an interest in going back. We would welcome you. Our staffing will support that if that's the case. But it needs to be, I think, a thoughtful family decision about when that happens.
Will dual learning continue in the fall for kids who are quarantined?
That's a great question also. We have talked in cabinet this week about putting together a task force of teachers and administrators to come up with some parameters. We know that it's likely some kids will need to continue to be quarantined. We're not out of that phase yet. And so while those mitigation protocols, are going to be revisited and revised based on guidance from the federal, state, and local level, we certainly know that instruction needs to continue. And so I know that in some of our initial conversations, it's likely that, you'll see Google Classroom continue as a place for, as a repository for information, so it's easily accessible. What are the expectations for follow-up and communication, the frequency, from a teacher to a student who's quarantined? those are things that we're still working through. But we certainly know that even before we had this pandemic, we had students that were out for various reasons, sometimes up to 10 days or longer. And we have a responsibility to teach them and keep learning going. So, depending on the situation and the frequency, we're going to have to develop some plans to know that we support kids, even if they are quarantined in the fall.
Thank you. And so I don't know if this is happening for everyone, but my chat box, the font is like so large. So it's really tough. I'm having a kind of a hard time scrolling through the questions. So just bear with me. I don't know why it's like this weird function I think it's on. Okay, so this is piggybacking, I think, on one of the questions I had asked earlier. Wouldn't it be prudent to keep the plans to have masks required in elementary schools? Seems strange to take the masks out of elementary schools for next fall when it helped with things beyond COVID, flu, other spreadable diseases.
Yeah, Jessica, I think I've answered this question previously. I think I would just reiterate that, once again, we take the next step in suggesting that this is our plan. Parents need to know the direction that we're going, but we've also had that qualifier, and then we're going to continue to monitor the guidance from federal, state, and local levels. So, it's one of those things that it's moving us beyond just optimistic and hopeful, but we're still being cautious and still going to consider the guidance and the factors surrounding our decisions moving forward.
Thank you. I'll tag Kia. Hopefully your font is a manageable size.
So far. So there's a question about the PD Connect within Sweetwater. Can you speak a little bit about some electives that might be available for the students? This question was specifically about art.
Great question. I don't believe that art is there yet. Some of this allocation, the initial allocation for electives at Sweetwater K6-ish for Connect is a PE elective. And depending on enrollment, we will add additional special elective opportunities. So it does, and that's no different than our brick and mortar schools. Some of our schools have up to 4 or 5 in their special area rotation because of enrollment. We have a minimum allocation, but we just don't know what the enrollment here is going to be for the PV Connect model. So we're starting with a minimum of 1, and then we'll drive that decision to go beyond that based on enrollment.
And there's a question about inviting parents that are not, that don't belong, I guess, are not UPC reps or are coming through the pipeline of UPC, to invite them to be part of district committee. So certainly gonna bounce that over to you since their question is directed towards the two of you. But I just would like to let everyone know that this year in particular, and certainly over the years past, but in this year in particular, we've had representations from more than half of our schools. So we're really proud of that. And also moving forward, we do plan on doing even more sort of outreach. It's been a tough year a lot of times to get involvement, but there is going to continue to be a coordinated effort to get voices from all areas, the sort of western area of our district, areas of our district that we don't always hear from. And I would also just want to sort of include to that, a lot of times UPC, particularly when we're talking about site-based decisions, so principal interviews, that sort of thing, we work very, very closely with those communities. And oftentimes sometimes none of those individuals who end up representing that community have even been to a UPC meeting. Sometimes we work with principals to sort of reach every area and every sort of perspective that we can to have a really diverse representation. That said, we can always do better, and we always want to include more voices. So I just wanted to kind of give that sort of context before I bounce it over to you, Dr. Bales.
Yeah, no worries. And I would echo what you've said, Jessica. I think UPC has a long tradition of trying to include voices for both active and non-active members of the UPC group. There's a variety of ways that people get involved, from curriculum committees to school councils. And so, we're going to continue to embrace that opportunity. One of the things that I have heard through this process and will likely be developing as a superintendent goal is a concept around 360-degree evaluation. We want the opportunity to have more frequent opportunities with technology to collect stakeholder input, and not to go around any of the systems we already have in place, but to enhance that voice and that perspective. For example, we talked about the texting component of the new mass communication tool. when we talk about our annual parent satisfaction survey. Also, in this, might be an opportunity to make that component a little more robust, a little more frequent, as well as the student voice. I've long been an advocate and had this at my elementary schools, where the students have an end of course assessment or an end of year opportunity to provide us feedback. So I think the student voice is also a piece to this process in trying to, collect feedback from people who are either active or non-active in the district, but have a voice we want to hear.
Thank
If I could
you.
just add,
Yes.
sorry, if I could just add, Jessica, too, looking back in the history a little bit, we've had numerous, in my formal goals with the board, we've actually had goals in there to try to increase parent involvement throughout the district and expand the parent involvement in UPC. And we've done a lot of things over the years to reach out to groups that maybe were not as involved, to try and solicit their help and their input moving forward. So I don't see that changing in terms of Dr. Bales' perspective moving forward, but it has been something that has always been a goal of ours to try and include more parents.
I'll just say to that too, that's, a sort of silver lining, if you will, right, to everything that's sort of gone on this past year is I think more people are definitely engaged and paying attention, whether it's to UPC meetings and also to, what's going on at their site and maybe getting more involved in their site council and also to the governing board meetings. And that's a really wonderful thing. I hope it continues above and beyond this year. And when COVID is a distant memory, I hope that we can continue to have that engagement and that advocacy. And, I think that being virtual has also really increased, as I said earlier, accessibility. And so I'm just going to say, again, if you're interested in learning more about UPC, if you're interested in, learning more about the processes, please feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to email us. We'll have a phone conversation. We'll set up a meeting because we certainly agree. We want, the more people who have their voices represented, the better we all off. And that's the whole sort of concept with what is a UPC rep, right? UPC exec team is not here to speak for any one perspective. We're really here to help try to just facilitate an infrastructure that can kind of be a pipeline in a very, very large district with many different views and many different families and students across such 98 miles of district property. So, it's this infrastructure is here and it exists to help support that, but you have to kind of tap in. I mean, that's what our ask is. So please continue to do that. And those UPC reps, right, they're not there to necessarily represent their view, right? Their goal is go back to their community, speak to their parent group, speak to their larger community, speak to their principals and their staff, and to bring that information to the meetings, to district leadership, and to facilitate and be truly a representative where everyone is not speaking for themselves. We're hoping to sort of be, a voice and a spokesperson to relay that information. So just that was just a quick, just reminder about what the role of UPC rep really is. And there's tons more information on our website. So I'm a tag key again, because I could go on all day about it, but I'm very passionate about UPC.
So there was a question about when a new principal is selected. I think it's maybe just address how principals are selected and maybe just the process in which a new principal is hired, and also an assistant principal.
Yeah, happy to. The process for both principal and assistant principal is outlined in district policy. And it includes, at the very end of the process, a community panel that includes stakeholder representatives from all of our stakeholder groups. And so what our process starts with both principal and assistant principal is a national posting, an advertising campaign, paper screening. We use video hire view as usually as part of the selection. We have a cabinet level interview, and then we end up sending 3 principal candidates to the community for their final opportunity to highlight strengths and weaknesses and additional comments. So we're always looking for that best match. The assistant principal process is very similar. And depending on the level, the appropriate assistant superintendent works with the principal or principals. When we have multiple vacancies, sometimes we post as pools. The assistant superintendent, like Dr. Jairus with TOAs at the elementary level, or with Mr. Long at the secondary level will work with the principals in that screening process, in that higher view process, and also then in the facilitation at the very end of the process for a community community interview as well. So the processes are very similar, and they include stakeholder input in both processes at the very end before a recommendation by the superintendent is made to the governing board.
Okay, there's a question here. Sorry, again, large font. Will do learning be continuing in the other schools, not Sweetwater, for students that need to be quarantined? So you kind of already addressed that. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but I feel like, yeah, I feel like we've got that. So thank you to that question. It's an important one. Will the district equity leadership team of advisors, or Delta, resume next year? Great question.
Absolutely, that will be an important part of our district moving forward, as I certainly expect our district's strategic plan to include an equity goal. Absolutely. Our focus is on what can we do to help all kids, right? And so, I just as soon stay away from buzzwords, but in the end, what can we do to help all kids succeed is our focus. And I believe that the district equity team of advisors gives us just another lens to listen, hear, and consider what we do for kids to help them succeed.
Did we get them all, Kia?
I believe so. I don't see any additional in the chat that weren't addressed.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I think if that's it, we'll give it just another second, but I know you all have lots to do and you're transitioning and tons of things at the very end of the year here. So I just want to thank Dr. Lee, Dr. Bales, Kia, our whole team today, and certainly the whole greater PV community for coming together. It's been a tough and a challenging year, and I'm personally very excited about the things that we've learned and some of the wonderful things that are now going to be a part of what PV does. Including obviously this PV Connect, this continuation of this new option that is, I think, really exciting. So there's some good along with the bad that we've had this year. So thank you to everyone who's been supportive and showing up, and we welcome your feedback. Please be sure to fill out the feedback form that Julie did, I think, put in the chat box at some point. I'm sure it's in there. And then I believe we'll also have Rachel, I think we have that one link where we have all that information from today on there as well for everyone to kind of have one spot where they can have all the information, because there was a lot of stuff today and we do realize that. So thank you to everyone who sent in questions, and thank you for answering those questions to the best of your ability today. We know it's really hard and tough, and no one has a crystal ball. So we appreciate your leadership and all that you're doing. So with that said, thank you, everyone. Have a safe and wonderful summer. And if there's anything in the meantime, feel free to reach out and we'll do what we can to help get any additional questions answered. Bye, everybody.